Things are changing, and I have been in quite the transition over the last 3 or 4 weeks. You may have seen that I haven't been posting. My content has been not the content that I usually share, and that I've pretty much been MIA, and I want to tell you why. Many of you are familiar with my story, but you don't have all of the details, and others of you have just joined and you have no idea who I am. So I want to start at the beginning. In December, I walked away from a $1.2 million business that I built from the ground up. I sacrificed everything for, and I left without a dime. I did that to get out of a hostile work environment with a business partner and personal relationship. And what I have not shared publicly is that at the time, I also knew that I had a six-figure personal liability that I was going to owe come tax time. And I walked away without a dime. I just said, take everything. I can't do this. I'm done. This was after 3 failed negotiations. My attorney's fees were racking up. And I was like, this is never going to end. I just want it to be over. So I walked away. I share this with you because I think that there's a really powerful message in this story as a whole. So I want to share what preceded this. For 4 years, I was in a really hostile, abusive relationship and business partnership. And that impacted my personal life. It impacted things with employees. It impacted the business. But there was always this brave front. I felt like I was living two different lives. And so my worst fear through all of that was I had given up my life and my business to be in this business partnership. And I wanted to make sure that when I walked away, I had something to show for it. My worst fear was that I would end up with nothing and I would be broke and I would be alone. And that's what kept repeating in my head. And so over the course of those years, I had taken out a six-figure line of credit against my dad's assets, and then that got threatened on, and the threat was basically that that would get defaulted on and make sure that that didn't get paid. So I ensured that I stayed until that got paid off. After that happened, the business started becoming really successful, and I was trying to control the outcome. I was like, I want to be able to walk away with my worth so that I can start this amazing new life. But the thing is that we cannot control anybody but ourselves, and we can't control any situation or any outcome. It just doesn't happen. I went through the normal routes. I went through a mediator. I spoke to multiple attorneys over the course of time. And the way that it ended up going was the only way that I think it ever would have gone. The last event that happened that finally pushed me over the ledge was on Thanksgiving. My business partner held the business hostage. And I was in a position where I had to choose between my safety and my business. And it was the wildest thing. Like, I have never told anybody this, that I got text messages threatening, if I don't hear from you by the time I wake up in the morning, I'm going to start canceling sales calls. And I had set a personal boundary of please only talk to me through appropriate work channels. Please only talk to me about work. And I didn't answer. I figured it was just a bluff. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was about to go get on a flight, and we had 7 calls canceled. And I had text messages that said, if I don't hear from you by 9 a.m., I'm going to cancel the rest. So I didn't know what to do. I went to the airport. My flight landed at 8:52, and I got a text that said, you have 8 minutes. And so I was sitting there panicking while we were deboarding, and then I started getting all these calls coming through. And my business partner called me 40 times in a row and then started threatening. And it wasn't just sales calls at that point. It was, I'm going to start refunding clients. And so I was on the phone with the mediator at the time saying, I don't know what to do. This was Black Friday, a holiday weekend. And I started getting texts that said, there goes the first refund, 12K. There goes the second refund. There goes the third refund. I'm feeding your teddy bear to my dog. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. And so that weekend, I literally went into a state of shock. I went to my mom's house to go be around people. And I just remember I didn't know what to do, and I was shaking. And so fast forward, I ended up receding my boundary because I had to choose between my safety and my business. And I was like, the business is going to implode. Like, these are my finances. This is, this whole snowball of events. And I did what I could over the next 4 weeks to try to exit the business quickly and fairly. And it didn't work out. Like, we had come to 3 different negotiations, and something would always change after my attorney was already working on the paperwork. And so on Christmas, I just said, that's it. I'm out. I'm leaving. Take everything. I don't need anything. And that was the decision that I made, knowing that I had that personal tax liability due. And I would do it again, because nothing is worth the cost of your freedom. Nothing was worth the cost of my freedom. And I share this with you because the fear is always so blown up in our heads. And for 4 years, I was so scared of that decision. I was so scared that I was going to be alone and broke and nothing to show for all of my hard work. And you know what happened? I was alone and broke, and I had nothing to show for my hard work, but I had the skill set that I had developed. I had my self-belief. I was convicted in something that I knew I wanted to do. And I was so empowered when I left. Deciding to leave was the hardest thing, but then once I made the decision and started executing on it, it was easy. It was the easiest thing I've ever done, because all I wanted was my freedom. So knowing that, I went all in. I put all the rest of my resources into my business, The Wild Way Home. I was so convicted in helping women overcome their patterns and leave bad situations and helping them repair and heal the inner parts of themselves. And I started the Sisterhood Walk, and I took it across the country, and I gave myself 90 days. And at the 90-day mark, about the time I received what I owed in taxes, I hadn't been as successful as I wanted to be. The numbers weren't working. I was working my ass off, and I didn't have enough of a runway. I didn't have enough funds, and I had to make a hard decision. And that was one of the hardest things, because it was like, it's this dream and this conviction and this passion. And I was like, I so wanted it to work. And that was the first time in my life that just working harder during that amount of time, I didn't see the results of working harder. And I share this with you because failure is not the end. Failure is a pivot. Failure is learning. Success is literally just stacked failure after failure until you win. Because if you can pivot and you can learn, eventually you will succeed. And all of this to also share with you, pain is temporary. Pain is short term. I would rather go through short term pain and chaos than live an eternity, live the rest of my life, my time, my experiences miserable. Those were the choices that I made. Those were the costs that I knew. And I'm essentially starting over now with nothing. And I would do it all again exactly the same way. And I'm so damn proud of every step that I've taken. I would do it all again. I share this with you because if you're in a season of pivots, if you're in a season of failure, if you're in a season of thinking that the fear is too great, lean in, be brave. You can have courage and get through it and show yourself what you're made of. Pain is temporary. And if you feel like you're just failing over and over, good. You're one step closer to success. So right now, I am in a season of transition. I'm in a season of figuring out what I want and figuring out what the future looks like and what the vision looks like. And this is the first time in 6 or 7 years that I've had a job, that I haven't worked for myself. And that's okay. Progress in life is not linear as much as we want it to be. It looks like a scatter plot. But if we keep learning from the lesson and if we keep pivoting, there's always an upward trend. I hope you took something out of this. This has been something that I have filmed and refilmed this video so many times. And it's not that I wanted it to be perfect. It's that every time I finished, I was like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I shared too much. Fuck that. You're allowed to be yourself and own your story. And I think the thing that I've feared is I was always told that speaking out would make me a victim. But I look at the definition of a victim. And a victim sits in the story. A victim waits for someone to save them. A victim doesn't stand up for themselves. I put the gasoline on my life and I lit the match. I'm not a victim. If you've been following The Wild Way Home for the last few months or even the podcast for the last year, it's not over. It's just a winding turn. And I can't wait to share with you what's next. Thank you for all of your support.